right, gamers, you are watching and listening to another episode of What You Gaming On, where we start each episode by asking you, the listener, the viewer, what are you gaming on? Tell us what you're gaming on, what game you're playing, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Tell us what game you're playing in the comments on any of my social media, or email it to me at whatyougamingon@gmail.com, and your answer will be featured in an upcoming episode of What You Gaming On. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone entering what they're gaming on, so I'm going to again talk about a little bit what I've been gaming on, and I've been playing Dragon Age Origins. I've actually kind of been switching around between the different Dragon Age games because I couldn't really decide which one I wanted to play, but I've been playing Dragon Age Origins, and just want to say I love this game. I'm a big fan of Bioware. I like Dragon Age. I like the Dragon Age franchise. I love the Mass Effect franchise. I loved the Knights of the Old Republic franchise. But Dragon Age Origins it came out in 2009, so I would say it's not necessarily a classic, but it kind of is. It's very much the kind of beta for, not even the beta, you could even call it the prologue of the Dragon Age franchise. It's the game that introduced us to Thedas. It introduced us to the Grey Wardens, to the Blight and the Darkspawn, to the Mages and the Templars, and all of the different moving pieces and characters that are going to be very important, not playable characters, but very important staples in Thedas of the rest of the games that you're going to play between Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Origins. It really was just the first building block that really just sets up the entire world of Thedas for you, so that when you go into Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Origins, you know the past events, you know who's king, you know who is a big part in this, or what happened with this character. It's the building blocks for the rest of the game. It's basically the prologue of the rest of the Dragon Age series. But as a game on its own, the gameplay is kind of stiff. I don't think, especially me, but I don't think anyone else really plays Dragon Age Origins because of the gameplay. The gameplay is very stiff. It's very raw. I would say it's even more raw than Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which you could easily see how Knights of the Old Republic is that they kind of take a lot of what they did with Knights of the Old Republic and put it into Dragon Age Origins. You can definitely see how Knights of the Old Republic was kind of the base layer of what they built Dragon Age Origins around gameplay-wise. The gameplay is very rough. It's very stiff. There's not a lot of really great action. It's very stiff, and like you just kind of sit there and you have your character attack, and it's just like poke, super attack, poke, and that's really all the gameplay is. There's not a lot of really all the gameplay is. There's not a lot of really great action in it, aside from the CGI moments, which there's plenty of really cool action in those, but in the gameplay itself, not that much really great action. But the strength of the story of Dragon Age Origins is the actual story, are the characters, and the fact that this game gives you not even three, like six, around a half dozen different character races that you can play. You can play a human noble or a human mage. You can play two different kind of dwarves. You can play two different kinds of elves. And you play these characters, and that's how the game starts. You start within that within that character's origin. So if you want to play a dwarf, you can play two different dwarves, where you can play one dwarf where he's a casteless dwarf in Orzammar, the city of the dwarves, and you're basically the lowest of the low in the dwarf class or dwarf hierarchy. You're scum. Like, you have no caste, you have no family, you have no ancestors, and it's the story of you kind of rising up and becoming a Grey Warden. Or you could play the dwarf noble, where you're like one of the favorite sons of the dwarf king, and you get betrayed by your brother, and then you have to go on and leave Orzammar and become a Grey Warden, then come back and face your brother, and it's your decision of how you want to face him. If you want to not let him be king, or if you want to say, let's bygones be bygones, you can be king. Which personally, that's why I don't like playing the dwarf noble, because Balin, as cutthroat and manipulative as he is, he kind of is the best choice for the dwarven king. So there is just a lot of possibilities for this game in the character you choose. The biggest problem with this, however, is that For me, the human noble is, in my opinion, the quote unquote true story of Dragon Age Origins, and it's also the character that I usually play whenever I play Dragon Age Origins. I pick the human noble for the sole purpose of Rendon Howe's involvement in the human noble origin story. Rendon Howe, voiced by the just amazing Tim Curry, but his role in the human noble story of him betraying your family, and then he kind of becomes the one of the big villains' right hands in the later story. His involvement in the human noble story makes him a compelling villain in the end. Whereas if you don't know who Howe is, you don't know what his relationship is to the main character or to what would have been the main character. If you're a dwarf, if you pick, a dwarf or a mage or an elf to play this game with, and you see Rendon Howe, he's basically just bad guy number 2. Like, there's nothing about him aside from him being the mustache twirling evil villain. There's nothing else about him. But if you play the human noble, then his character has a lot more depth to it, and it's because of that, for me, that the human noble is the quote unquote real hero of Ferelden. He's the one that for in any playthrough I do, well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but in my playthrough, the human noble is who becomes the hero of Ferelden. He is the main hero of Ferelden. But there are just so many different choices, not even just with choosing your origin, because like most of Bioware games, you can go and you make decisions about what's going to happen, of how you're going to treat someone, decisions about some major events in the story, and the game kind of evolves with those with your decisions. So my playthrough could be very different from another person's playthrough depending on the race they chose or the decisions they made, and that's kind of been a big staple of Bioware, very similar to how Knights of the Old Republic was, where you got to choose your dialogue choices and kind of decide the character you wanted to be and decide the big moments throughout the game. And again, just how it is in Mass Effect, you choose who your character is, you make the big decisions. That is a very big staple of Bioware games. The problem is, and we'll move on, and now I'll move into my topic. The problem with this is that there's so much freedom in specifically Bioware games that it's almost too much, at least for me. My biggest problem is that I don't take advantage of, when I do another playthrough, I make different choices, I play a different character, which is kind of like that. Because the game works like that, these games offer a lot of replayability for other players. But for me, when I find my character that I like, when I find the choices that I've made that I like, the decisions, and I find my world state of how I want the world to be, of how when I'm playing the game, this is the world that I want to create, I don't deviate from that in any future playthroughs. I try to. If I go back and play it again, I was like, you know what? I haven't played the elf. I haven't played an elven. Oh wait, no. Actually, did I say 2 elves? Yeah, I did say 2 elves. I don't play the elvish character because I'll be playing and it's like, yeah, but this isn't my character. I want to play my character. So I'll go back and just start another human noble playthrough, and that's pretty much what I do. It's the same thing I do for Dragon Age 2. It's the same thing I do for Dragon Age Origins when I have my character, of how he looks, of how he acts, the decisions that he makes, the kind of character that he becomes, the major choices of how I want the world to be in this game. I don't deviate from that in any other playthroughs, because I make my character with my choices. But the other problem is they're barely my choices. They're barely my character, because specifically with Dragon Age Origins, I want my character, I want my Grey Warden to be as badass and awesome as the Grey Warden that we see in the trailers for Dragon Age Origins. Maybe not the trailers, but they did like 2 or 3 cinematic videos, one for the Deep Roads, one for the Temple of Sacred Ashes, which are 2 just parts of the game that happened. They did these really awesome cinematic videos with this really badass looking warden. He's kicking ass and you see the other characters doing it, and it looks great. And I want my character to be as badass as that. So when I create my character, that's the character that I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create that really cool character with, my own little tweaks to, hair color or eye color so that I make him a little more like me as well. But for the most part, I try to make this awesome character. It's the same reason I go with the standard Hawk mage for Dragon Age 2. Is like they had one of the trailers for it was Hawk fighting the Aeroshock on the steps of Kirkwall, and it's just this really awesome thing where he's using his mage powers and he has the champion armor set. And it looks awesome. It looks badass. And that's the Hawk that I want to play. That's the Hawk that I always choose. A mage default face Hawk, because he looks awesome and that just looks so cool, and I want to be that kind of Hawk. And the same goes for Dragon Age Origins. I'm sorry, not Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Inquisition. Although, to be fair, throughout their trailers, I actually went back recently and looked at them. Throughout their trailers, they show a lot more variety of the Inquisitor player or the Inquisitor character that you create. There's not just one Inquisitor character that they show in the trailers. There's a few, but even then, it's always a human, and that's what I always do. I always go with the human. Also, specifically with the Dragon Age Inquisition story, it makes no sense to me that the world would embrace someone as the Herald of Andraste if they were a dwarf, an elf, or a Kunari. I know the story of Dragon Age Inquisition. I know that's not what actually happens, but the world basically embraces them as the Herald of Andraste, as the prophet of their lord, and that just doesn't work in my head as much to me if it was a Kunari or a dwarf or an elf, because Dragon Age, the entire Dragon Age series, as much as it's fantasy, as much as it's fictional, it's also very political. There's a lot of real-world issues in these games, like racism, like sexism, like class. There's a lot of issues, and a lot of people in these games are very prejudiced against the other races of these games. So having the world perceived prophet of their lord be a Kunari, who is the furthest away from the Andrastian chantry as can be, and then or dwarves or elves, who again have their own lore, have their own lores, have their own religions and faiths, to have the Herald of Andraste be any of those races, it just doesn't make sense for me. So I always go with the human character, and I've created this character. He always looks the same. He always is a sword and board, a sword and shield character. It's a character that I always use, and that's my biggest problem with these games. Is that as much as the freedom of these games gives, as much as you can shape the world as you want and make the big decisions and make the big choices for what's going to change in this entire world that you're basically helping create of Thedas, I find my playthrough that I like, I find the decisions that I like, I find the character that I like, and I don't deviate from that character. And on the one hand, I still enjoy playing it. Whenever I'm playing that character over and over again, I'm still enjoying it. So it's not a huge problem. It's not something that I lose sleep over, but I totally recognize that I don't utilize or take advantage of the different choices that you can make in these games, and which makes it really weird that I'm such a big fan of Bioware games, because it's the same with Mass Effect. I have my character, I have my choices. With Mass Effect, I'm a little more open to it because I have two characters. I have my male Shepard, and then I have my female Shepard. I don't have multiple things for Mass Effect Andromeda. But for the original Mass Effect trilogy, Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3, I have my playthroughs, I have my characters, I have what I want them to do, I have what I want them to say, I have what I want them to react in each situation. I have all of their stories mapped out in my head, and whenever I go back to replay those games, that is the map that I'm following. That is the script that I am following. And as much as I enjoy it, I do recognize that I don't take advantage of the freedom that these games give. But what do you think about freedom in games? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you have your set character that you're going to play by every single time you play this game? Or do you like to play the different characters throughout these games and make the different choices and see literally every possible outcome that you can make in these games? Let me know in the comments and follow me on all the internets. If you want your answer of what you're gaming on to be featured in an upcoming episode of What You Gaming On, make sure to leave it in the comments. Give me it on any social media or email me at whatyougamingon@gmail.com, and your answer will 100% will be featured in an upcoming video of What You Gaming On. If you want to check out my video game reviews, you can also go to www.treyguillotine.com, where I also have Marvel movie and TV show reviews, and subscribe to my channel to geek out some more. Keep on gaming, gamers.